Hi, so I'm going to make a video about tips and pointers on how to write good philosophy essays. So, this is basically for if you're a college student. I think this is where it'll come of the most use. I don't know if you'll really be able to apply it to any other areas of life. Unless you like writing essays for fun, then maybe it'll help there. But I actually just made this video, but it was a little bit all over the place. And I only really decided that this was the topic I wanted to make the video on right towards the end, but I'd sort of run out of recording time, so I deleted that, and yeah, I'm gonna do this. So, for philosophy essays, you could get a really good grade for writing a completely different essay to someone else, and that other person could also get a really good grade. So, for example, if you want an A grade, all you've got to do is write a relevant answer to the question. And that doesn't necessarily mean that that relevant answer to the question is going to be the same as the person who sat next to you writing the same essay, or writing an essay based on the same question, because you can both come out with completely different answers, yet both come out with extremely high grades, because philosophy essays aren't necessarily prescriptive in the same way that, say, a sociology essay is going to be prescriptive, or I won't talk about other sorts of essays because I don't do other subjects, but yeah, so you can be quite creative with essays. So say if you're doing an OCR spec or an AQA spec, you'll have learned a lot of different content throughout the year, and you should be able to make synoptic links between that. You should be able to make synoptic links with the content that you've learned. 1 minute, there's people. Okay, the people have gone. So yeah, you should be able to make synoptic links with the content that you've learned throughout the course. So if you get asked a question on, I don't know, I'm not even going to be able to think of an example off the top of my head right now. But yeah, you can pull in different parts of the content. For example, I use pluralism as an example. So say if the essay is on pluralism, and I'm just using this as an example because I wrote an essay on it the other day and I managed to make some synoptic links with it. So with pluralism, you can actually bring in, like, so say if the questions evaluate that pluralism is the best approach to religion, the best approach to understanding religion, you can bring in content from religious experience. So with William James, well, he found that the different religious experiences had similar characteristics, and these don't alter based on the different religious faiths. You generally have a similar religious experience to some. For someone in Christianity to have a religious experience, they will have a similar experience to someone who's a Buddhist or a Sikh, who are worshipping completely what they think as different gods, but they're having different experiences. So you can bring that in there as a supporting point. So it's synoptic links are good. What else you have to do? You have to keep really good question focus. Now that's probably one of the most important parts, and what I'm about to say isn't always viable. You can't always do this, but quoting the question helps. So for example, if you write a paragraph, make sure you constantly go back to read the question, and then if you've got a discussion question, so pluralism is the best approach to understanding religion, so you finish your paragraph and then you say, therefore this supports the point that pluralism is or is not the best way to understanding religion. So you just keep that in mind. Just quoting the question, I find that helps me to stay on focus with the question, to stay on task, because you can write an essay and it can have a lot of content, but if you're not linking back to the question, then it's not a relevant answer. So linking back to the question is probably one of the most important parts about writing a good essay. Another thing I would suggest is that you do a lot of revision. Like you've got to know the stuff. So do a lot of wider reading. Do a lot of research into relevant material that then you can bring into essays. Because the more knowledge you have, the better the essay is that you're going to be able to write. Because it's all good saying, well, link back to the question, but if you haven't got the knowledge there in the first place, then how are you even going to be able to know if you're writing a relevant response to the question? Because you could just be, you could have just not done the course and still had to go at writing the question. You could probably manage to formulate an answer, you could probably manage to quote the question at the ends of your paragraphs, but it won't necessarily be of a high level. You've got to know the content, and in order to know the content, you have to spend a lot of time thinking about it for yourself. So, for example, reading the specification, looking at the questions which are on the specification, because those are the sorts of questions that the exam board could ask you about in your final exam. So make sure that you've thought about all the possibilities, all the different possible questions that they could ask you, and that you've actually thought about it for yourself, and it's not just a textbook answer, because examiners don't really want you to just be constantly quoting from large blocks out of the textbook, because it doesn't show a great degree of it doesn't show that you've actually thought about it for yourself. It just shows that you've got a good memory. It doesn't show that you're a good philosophy student, and philosophy is obviously all about thinking, so you have to, I guess, be good at thinking. And another tip I would give is to write a lot of practice essays, because it's important to be able to apply the content. So you might know the content, you might have revised it all, but you've got to actually be able to apply it in different areas. So maybe just go through your philosophy textbook, pick a question, try not to spend too much time thinking about what you're going to write about the question beforehand, because obviously you won't have that time in the real exam. But if it's your first few practice essays, then yeah, spend a little bit of time thinking about it. But you want to be able to get to the point where you can look at a question and quickly formulate an answer to it in your head, formulate some sort of mental plan that you might be able to jot down on your exam paper, and then you know exactly what you're going to write. But yeah, so practice essays are really good, because I don't know, I think practicing just helps. Like, I don't see why it wouldn't. And I think it's helped me a lot as well. Like, sometimes I can get stuck on a topic, and I'll be worrying about it because I won't know if I can actually write it into an essay. Like, I might know the content okay, but I won't necessarily know how to apply it. So I found that doing practice essays has actually helped me understand the content better, because I've been able to write about it and make the links on the paper rather than just in my mind. But it's also just good because obviously at the end of the year you're going to have to be able to write 3 essays in the span of like 2 hours. So yeah, you need to be good at writing essays and getting your paragraphs sorted. So paragraphs is one that I struggle with. I generally write pretty long paragraphs, and I've got quite small handwriting. So with paragraphs, you want to not go on with your points. So for example, in my last few essays, I've had the feeling that I have to almost express the opposing views of what I'm arguing. But I think it's good to start with the end in mind, know where you want to end up, and then it's like you're not just figuring it out as you go through the essay. It's like you know where you're going, you know exactly the case that you want to make, and you can just apply that to the question. So the reason that I drag out my paragraphs sometimes is I'll add a lot of buts. So it's like I'll make my point, I'll evaluate it a little bit, and then I'll just say, but however, this person might say this instead, which contradicts the point that I've just made. And that's sometimes necessary, but it does depend on the question. However, it's probably best just to know exactly what you want to write and just make a case for that. It's okay to be biased, which I know some of the subjects might not be like that, but in certain philosophy essays it is okay to be biased, because you can't put down everybody's views in the essay, because you just simply haven't got enough time to do that in 40 minutes. So you just got to select relevant content and make your case that way. And don't worry if you're seeming a little bit biased, but try not to be too ranty about it. Yeah, but that is contingent on the nature of the question, because if you get an evaluate question, then presumably it's asking you to show both sides. But one thing I would suggest, even if it is an evaluate question, make sure that you have a clear conclusion in the end. Try not to discuss in your conclusion. Your whole essay should just lead up to what the conclusion is going to say. So, for example, you might share both sides of an argument in your essay, but in the conclusion you have to decide exactly which side you think wins, which side you think comes out strongest, because you don't want to be discussing in your conclusions. You could say, so this side's good because, and then this side, however, to rebut this side's not so good because. That's what should be happening throughout your essay if it's an evaluate question, and not in your conclusion. In your conclusion you should be deciding exactly what's the best approach to take. And I think that's it really. Just make sure you know all your quotes, make sure you know all the scholars, make sure you've revised enough, and it should be fine. But definitely make sure you do practice essays, definitely make sure you try and keep paragraphs concise, try not to go on too much, try not to waffle. That's pretty much it. I don't know how good this video is because I'm really cold right now and I want to go home and read and revise, and yeah. Okay, thanks for watching.